Today, we've had a huge balance patch where a lot of old heroes were revisited by Valve. And just to show you guys how big it is, well, here's the new Paradox Max AP. You can swap an entire team at once. And that's just the beginning. Wraith now has Balatro, where you get random cards that spawn above you, and all the cards do different things, and the Joker has all the effects. Calico now gains 300 bonus souls for every kill after Leaping Slash. Shiv's Execute is now a skill shot. You can just target it in a direction. And Infernus's ult can be scaled to be bigger than your screen realistically. Now, these are just some teasers of the changes, so, you know, watch the full video to see this. It's a huge patch, so I can't possibly cover every balance change and read every little thing. If you want to see my full reaction to the patch, link will be in the description. I uploaded it on my second channel, Deathy VODs, so you can watch it there if you want to see the full thing. And if you want the link to the patch notes, it'll be there as always. Now, let's get into it. Before we get into the specific heroes, let's just talk about the new item. We've got Golden Goose Egg. Now, this item gives you minus 10% damage penalty. Now, this is any damage that you deal. This can be your items, this can be your abilities, your gun, anything that you deal, minus 10%. You get 1 meter sprint speed, 1 out of combat regen. So the stats are essentially almost nothing, right? If anything, the negative stats outweighs anything. And it costs 800. And it gives you, if you hatch the egg, you gain souls and permanent buffs. Now, the amount of souls that you get is when you buy this egg, as you can see, I'm going to buy it. It starts at 400, right? So 400 souls is just the value of any 800 item. Like if I buy extra spirit and then I sell it, it'll give me 400 souls. Golden Goose Egg is no different. And then it scales at 75 per minute. So after 10 minutes, it'll have 750 souls accumulated. And for every 200 souls, you get 1 golden statue buff. Now, I think that the purpose of this item is probably to be a support item, but I know that pretty much everyone's going to be going it at first, and people are going to try to be really greedy with this item and keep it until 20, 30 minutes and make a decent amount of money. Now, realistically, the minus 10% damage penalty is a pretty big drawback, and I think that we'll mostly, you know, long term, we'll mostly see this item on supports, or if we see it on a bunch of people, it's likely to get nerfed, right? So it's either overtuned and it's going to get nerfed, or it's mostly going to be a support item. That's my take on it. I could be wrong. We'll see, but that's my current opinion. I think it's a really cool item, though. Reminds me of a bit of a teamfight tactics thing, so kind of cool. Now, we're going to start with Abrams. We're not going to go over all the changes, but starting with probably one of the most hated heroes of last patch was just Abrams. Now, Abrams, I don't know if the nerfs are going to be enough, but they basically kind of like nerf his damage overall. It's kind of unclear. Like overall, he does less damage for sure, but his stuns are longer. So his shoulder charge stuns you for longer when he puts 2 point into it. But if he has 0 points, it's significantly less long, and he doesn't get damage for 1 AP into it. And his Siphon Life has increased scaling when it's maxed, but he kind of gets even less value without items, right, from Siphon Life, so he doesn't just get a ton of power from just maxing it. And Infernal Resilience actually gives him debuff resist when he maxes it, so he has some incentive to max it. And his ult is just like an insanely long radius and an insanely long stun. The stun is 2.2 seconds. So if you max ult, you put 2 points in ult and you get duration, you stun for 2.82 seconds on your ult, which is, as you can see, I stunned this guy, he's stunned, he's still stunned, still stunned. So that's pretty significant. Now, we'll see if Abrams kind of stays meta. I think that he's definitely still going to be good. I don't know how good he is going to be because there's so many meta changes, but yeah. Apollo got, in my opinion, mostly kind of nothing burger changes. He got some slight nerfs to Flawless Advance, for example. It doesn't cast as fast. The one was pretty much untouched. Riposte was pretty much untouched. His ult was touched a little bit, where the base damage was nerfed, but the spirit scaling was improved. So the moment you get, I think it was like 40 spirit, you actually just do more damage. 40 or 50 spirit, I can't remember. You actually just do more damage than you did before. So for late game, it's not a nerf. So overall, mostly kind of not much to Apollo. All right, so Billy got a couple of changes. The first one is that Rising Ram just reduces cooldown by 50% on impact, regardless of AP. So the base ability now has that as part of it. However, the base duration was reduced a little bit. So you have to put 2 points into Rising Ram to get kind of like the far Rising Ram that you used to get. Bash Down is kind of very similar. However, you get a little bit more radius on the second upgrade, but the overall initial Bash Down radius is smaller. And then Blasted kind of got a little bit less spirit scaling, but when you max Blasted, the spirit scaling on Blasted is crazy. So you get 1.2 now. So it's buffed if you max it. Before you max it, it's worse. And that's kind of the thing with a lot of these abilities, right? That's exactly what Valve did. And then with Chain Gang Max, okay, so the base ability The 1 AP gives 40% spirit resist and 40% bullet resist, which is crazy. The max one gives you 1.3 second of unstoppable per hero pulled in. Okay, so if you pull in, let's say you've got, let me just remove the bots, but let's say you have 5 McGinnis, and you pull all of them in. You just spawn a bunch here, and you pull all of these guys in. You've got max ult. Okay, sorry, I didn't have max ult, but let me pull them here with the max ult. All of a sudden, you've got unstoppable for basically as long as the item. So if you get like a really, really big ult, you're going to be rewarded with a really long unstoppable, which is kind of cool. So I like the ability changes. I think that they're in the right direction. Now, Celeste pretty much got, you know, a light tap on the wrist, but a bunch of other heroes got buffed. So I think that they're hoping to bring the heroes more to the others' level. But yeah, on Celeste's side, she mostly is the same hero. It's just that she has slightly less acceleration. She has even further reduced gravity, though, so she can stay in the air for even longer. But she doesn't accelerate as fast. On top of that, her Shining Wonder ultimate now has a 3.2 linger duration as opposed to 4.5, which is quite significant. The bounce range has also been reduced a little bit. Calico got a lot of changes, but really the most significant are, first of all, she gets 300 souls on any kill that, you know, was hit by Leaping Slash, basically. So if she just hits someone with Leaping Slash, she gets 300 souls if they die, which is kind of insane and ridiculous, and is almost certainly going to get nerfed because this is just giving her so much money. But regardless, she got kind of a rework in a few ways. First of all, her kit is a lot less clunky. The first thing is you can Leaping Slash, you know, just looking at somewhere. So before you had to jump and Leaping Slash. Now let's say you want to go up, you can just look up and Leaping Slash, and it's much less clunky. And on top of that, you can also Leaping Slash close range. So for those of you who played Calico, you know that before you weren't able to do that, and you had to kind of like space yourself perfectly and hit the Leaping Slash. Now if you're like very close range, you can just Leaping Slash right on top of you, and all you have to do is look down, or you can just look right on top of the person. And basically it's more intuitive. It goes kind of like where your cursor is, right? Now, the other big change is that Ava gains speed as you stay in the cat state, basically, right? So especially if you have 2 points in it, let me just change that. You put 2 points in it. You go from 30% move speed at the beginning, and then the longer you stay in Ava, it kind of ramps up, as you can see. And then eventually it gets to the max speed. So right now I'm at the max speed, for example. Now, it doesn't look that fast. That's because I don't have any movement items. But if I just buy enduring speed, as you can see, all of a sudden it's significantly faster. Now, this is interesting because I think one of the complaints that a lot of people had before was that, you know, Calico would just turn into a cat and just escape instantly. Now there's a slight ramp up to it that it takes a couple seconds, as you can see. So it takes 4 seconds. On top of that, they've added damage amp to Ava's max tier 3. So without getting into all of the changes, some of the big kind of like themes are that a lot of tier 3 upgrades for abilities got like massive changes and massive buffs. Okay, so they've kind of made so many tier 3 abilities really strong. Calico is not really the best example, but like Ava gives you 20% damage amp if you max it. When you come out of Ava, you have 20% damage amp, which, you know, that's pretty good. And it was taken away from the ult. So those are some of the biggest changes in Calico. There's obviously some other small things, like, for example, the bombs. Now the 2 AP deals bonus damage versus barriers, which is kind of crazy. So, like, the bombs are going to be really good at just shredding a lot of barriers. So it might be a good pick against Paige. And it's these small niche interactions that, you know, make Deadlock so fun. Now, moving on to Doorman. Doorman got a significant rework in the sense that his ultimate works a little bit differently when you put AP in it. So when you max AP and you put someone in the hotel, you then gain unstoppable while they're in the hotel. And if they fail to check out, meaning they missed the jump or whatever, then you can use your ult again within 10 seconds. Right? So it basically has almost no cooldown. Other than that, I would say most of the Doorman changes are not that impactful. Now, one thing is that the doorbell no longer has an explosion when it goes through targets. So before, when you shot it through, it would kind of explode and deal damage. Now it's only the, you know, activating it that does damage. And then the max AP is kind of interesting, where you can kind of stack bells because they have a really long lifetime with the max AP, so they last like 20 seconds. So you can stack them for a big explosion. And also they continuously apply the move speed slow in the area, so it can be kind of nice for area control. Other than that, it's really just the stun here from 1.25 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Like I said, there's a bunch of other changes, but like these are the most impactful ones. one thing that I forgot to mention about Doorman, so it's going to be hard to visualize it, but when someone returns from your ult, so you cast your ult and they come back, right? The moment that they come back, they have what's called a time slow. So they're kind of like Paradox Carbine effectively, and so they can barely move. As you can see here, that was the stun from the 2 AP, because they also get stunned if they fail to check out. So it's very, very punishing. If you fail the Doorman path now, it's actually like insanely punishing. But regardless, moving on. All right, so Drifter got some pretty significant reworks to his passive as well as his ultimate. So first of all, his passive, he always gets the bonus damage regardless of whether he gets the kill or not. And I think Valve in general are moving with being lenient on these stacking bonuses. For example, Talonbird now has like a linger duration. Moan Krill ult, it's like if he dies within a few seconds. Calico leaping slash if he dies within a few seconds. And now I believe even Vindicta snipe also has that kind of linger thing. And with Drifter, it's like, hey, you don't need to get the last hit anymore. The person just needs to die, and you need to be like nearby them, right? So you get that 3% weapon damage. So he's gonna get a lot more weapon damage on average, especially if he wasn't securing kills. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is he's also gonna get he gets healed now for a percentage of his missing health on kills, whereas before it was, I believe, as cooldowns were being reduced. And then the other thing is that his ult now makes all targets count as isolated. Okay, so any target that's ulted, sorry, not all targets, but any target that is ulted is considered as isolated. And so you do benefit from your passive even in team fights, as long as you use your ult and you target the people that are affected by your ult. Now, this is a change that a lot of people wanted to see. And I think it's a fantastic change. And other than that, he got some other changes. For example, Rend maxed now silences people close range. And also they changed up the damage. So now the base Rend damage is spirit damage and the close range damage is melee damage, which to be honest makes a lot more sense. And then the max Stalker's Mark no longer grants charges, but it doubles the bleed and it gives healing reduction. So 4% bleed, it's a lot of damage. Obviously you can't really tell on this Abrams, but yeah. So Dynamo got a bunch of changes. As you can see, the boon received text just spammed my screen, but Dynamo got a bunch of changes. But I would say by far the most impactful one is how Quantum Entanglement works. So Quantum Entanglement no longer reloads your gun, and it no longer gives you fire rate. So it doesn't reload you or your teammate's gun or give fire rates. And so they're kind of putting him more a little bit into the spirit damage support category, but his kinetic pulse reduces bullet resist by 18%, which is an extremely significant amount. So regardless, a bunch of small little balance tweaks to Dynamo. Nothing super significant on its own, just like a lot of quality of life as well, right? For example, when he's healing, he can jump, which previously he could not, right? You canceled it if you jumped. So that's some quality of life changes, as well as some singularity rebalancing where the base ability no longer does percent damage, but the max ability does more percent damage. And you see a lot of that in the balance patch where it's like, hey, base ability no longer does this, but if you invest a bunch of points into it, it now does it even better than it did before. Okay, so Haze got a decent amount of changes. Now, first thing is she lost so the max smoke bomb AP, she lost the kind of like invulnerability. However, her max smoke bomb acts kind of like Victor's max 2, which it's a debuff remover, right? So it removes debuffs. So if you get something like rapid recharge, all of a sudden you have 4 debuff removers that you can kind of not spam. I mean, it's a 5-second cooldown, but that's pretty good. It also gives you 30% bullet lifesteal, right? So it solves some very real problems for carry heroes, like for example, getting disarmed or getting permanently slowed or stunned or all these things, right? Getting knocked down, etc. That kind of solves this issue for Haze, particularly like in a way. Now, when it comes to the sleep dagger, it doesn't take away stamina anymore. However, if you max it, then the sleep lasts longer and the person has minus 50% move speed and dash speed for 2.5 seconds on wake up. So they're going to be hella slow if you max the dagger, right? So you can kind of see where this is going. And then the max ult is also crazy because it gives you 1 additional target. Again, it used to do this and it was really good, and now it's back. So you can go ult build. So it seems that there's going to be a little bit more viable different options for Haze. Like I can definitely see just ult build Haze being pretty good, especially in the late game. You just kind of farm, you get to your ricochet, unstoppable, etc. build, and then you just kill everyone because you now have 2 targets and it ricochets. So very strong, very scary. And then the max smoke bomb is just nice convenience. Max dagger crazy, and max fixation is kind of the same thing, but there were some small changes there. Okay, so Infernus got a lot of changes, right? And what I want to say about Infernus is, well, first of all, he wasn't very good last patch, but he's traditionally been a very hated hero when he's good. So we'll kind of see, and that's mostly because of like how Afterburn works. And they've kind of added a way where Afterburn might even be more annoying in a way. So they've added a new mechanic to Afterburn where if you max it, there's this thing called base burn duration and max burn duration. So what that means is if I set someone on fire, this is their base burn duration. So it's 3 seconds. However, once I set this guy on fire, I can then shoot more bullets into him to get to the max burn duration, as you can see, right? Which is 6 seconds if you max Afterburn. Now, if you don't max Afterburn, you don't actually get access to this new mechanic at all. But yeah, Afterburn can last a really, really long time if you max it. And it's quite scary. Then here, they've kind of buffed Flame Dash a little bit, you know, kind of made it like, okay, we want the trail to last a little bit longer. We want the Flame Dash build to be a little bit more viable. Napalm didn't really get many changes, just some small rebalance. And Concussive Combustion, oh boy, Concussive Combustion. Let's just say, I just want to show you guys something, okay? If I max ult, okay, and I buy Greater Expansion, I just want you guys to look at this, all right? Abrams is over there. Now you'd think that's pretty far, but it's not far enough because he'll get stunned. So the max ult with Infernus with Greater Expansion is completely ridiculous. I mean, it literally, like, it covers pretty much as far as the eye can see. I mean, from here, it's over there, but it's circular, right? So, like, it would stun, like, literally everyone. In the mid-boss, it's like the entire pit just gets stunned by Infernus. And so I was playing, like, an ult Flame Dash Infernus build earlier, and it was actually, like, I was having the time of my life like that. It was really, really fun. But yeah, there's some pretty crazy Infernus changes, so I'll let you guys explore that. But that's by far the biggest one to me, is like the Afterburn change, the max burn, and then the ult is just gigantic. Oh, also, Afterburn is now applied by meleeing, which is just a nice quality of life. You ever got someone really close to Afterburn, but then you had to reload? Now you can light melee them, and then you can proc the Afterburn on them, and then Flame Dash. So hey, who knows? Maybe we go back to building Spirit Snatch on Infernus. Yeah. All right, so Ivy has got a ton of changes. Okay, first of all, this hero is a spirit demon now, but also a potential gun demon. So this is kind of what's fun when there's a new patch, is that you don't really know what's going to be good, right? So with Ivy, the things that are new is the max kudzu bomb, which is now called Entangling Thorns. What it does is if you stay in it for 2 seconds, and let me just demonstrate, like Abrams stays in it for 2 seconds. After 2 seconds, he becomes entangled. Now, you can't really see it, but essentially entangled is immobilized. And so it's the same thing as Graves' Wall, right? So they're just kind of stuck there. They can't use their movement ability, and they're stuck there. So you can do kind of the wombo combo with the kudzu into the stone form, and then you keep him in there, and then they're stunned from the stone form, and then after that, they're entangled, and it's very, very powerful. Now, max kudzu now makes it so... Max 2, which before was Tether, but now it's called Kudzu Connection, makes it so it's on permanently. So you literally just walk around with Tether active permanently. And if you have, let me just go max level and get Boundless to give you guys an idea. With just Boundless and max level, this thing gives me 40% fire rate and 43% bullet lifesteal permanently. Just all the time. I'm just walking around, right? With just Boundless. Now, of course, I am max level, but that doesn't give me that much spirit. I could very easily get a lot more spirit than this, and not only does it give it to me, but it also gives it to an ally, right? And it also replicates the healing and all that stuff. So that's pretty crazy. Then max stone form now gives +1 second duration and increased spirit damage. The spirit scaling is 2.8 on the max stone form, guys. 2.8. Your stone form can hit giga nukes, like giga nukes. It's absolutely insane. So, and then the ult wasn't changed that much. The biggest change to the ult is, one, it doesn't knock up anymore. So when you like ult before, you would like knock up. Now it's a little bit bigger, but it doesn't have the knock up element. And the other change that's really massive is that if you take damage, you can't cast it. So for example, let me make this guy my mimic. If he shoots me, as you can see, my ult is going on cooldown, right? So as long as he shoots me, I can't use it for a couple seconds. So I have to not take damage. You have to not take damage. So you can't really do the cheese anymore where you would like push a walker and then just fly your teammate away. I mean, you can do that if you don't take damage. If your teammate takes damage, it's fine. But you have to be a little bit more mindful, and you can't use it as a free escape anymore. But it doesn't have any cast time when you use it on yourself anymore. All right, Kelvin got a ton of changes himself. So the first change is that Frost Grenade now heals by default. So you don't have to invest any AP for it to heal. However, you can invest AP to increase the heal amount. So if you put 1 point, for example, it now heals 90 and does 90 damage. Then if you invest 2 points, it now freezes stamina regen for a little bit, meaning that the person that you use the frozen grenade on doesn't regen stamina for a couple seconds. And then if you max it, you get increased scaling on both the heal and the damage. And look, if you buy a decent amount of spirit, you can get this to pretty ridiculous amounts quite quickly. So this is already 300 healing, 308 damage. Now this isn't anything that you couldn't do before, but it's just a little bit different. Then they reworked Ice Path a little bit. So now you get bullet resist when you're on Ice Path for 1 AP, 35% bullet resist. So it's a very, very significant amount. Then if you max it, you get 35% spirit while you're on the Ice Path, which is essentially like kind of like 2 boundless spirits, because boundless spirit is 15% spirit power as well as 35 spirit. So, you know, if you have boundless spirit as well as like max level, just to give you guys an idea, I have 166 spirit. Now, if I max this and I go on the Ice Path, I have 209 spirit. So this is giving me roughly 50 spirit. So it's giving me essentially boundless spirit if you already have a lot of spirit. And it lingers for a little bit, of course, but not very long, only a few seconds. So you kind of need to be on the Ice Path. Now the beam was changed a little bit. It was kind of like nerfed, but like the scaling was looked at. There was a lot of changes to the beam. Essentially, it kind of performs as the same ability, so I'm not gonna like talk about it too much. Now, one thing that's really nice is that you can move around and you can cast things, right? For example, if I have Warp Zone, I can cast Warp Zone while using my beam. I can cast all my abilities. But yeah, you can use items while using beam. So something like Warp Zone is going to help you kind of stick on top of people, for example. Now, the ult functions somewhat differently. So one thing with the ult is that you can now target it on specific people, okay? For example, rather than just pressing 4, okay, I can now press 4 and then target it on the Abrams, and then it'll kind of make sure that he can't escape, I guess. It's kind of unclear to me whether this can miss or not, but you can also always alt cast it and it'll cast it on yourself. So if you ever experience, you know, doming and then the person's slightly outside the dome, well, now you can just cast it on them directly. All right, so we've got Geist, and I am thrilled with the Geist changes because, man, I was bored with Gun Geist being kind of like the only build, and now we've got, let's just say we've got a lot of different options with Geist, because the first thing that they did was they reworked the way that Essence Bomb does self-damage. And when people ask me, why is Spirit Geist bad? Why is Bomb Build bad? I would say, well, the more you invest in Spirit, the more the bomb hurts you, and so you're kind of like, and the self-damage scaling is so much worse than the actual damage, because the self damage scaled 1.8 and the damage was 1.2, but now it just does it does 30% of the damage to you. So if the bomb does 90 damage, as you can see, it's doing 27 damage, so it's doing 30%. So if I have Boundless, which might actually be viable on Geist, let me just buy a bunch of spirit items, for example. Okay, if I have this and I level up a little bit, in this situation, buy the bomb only damages me for 78, so it still doesn't damage me that much, in fact, right? And so it might actually be viable now. It might actually be viable. On top of that, another change that they made is the life drain. Well, first of all, life drain just got some buffs overall. When you max life drain, it has increased spirit scaling, which once again, you know, for the boundless angle could work. And on top of that, you get more charges. So you get +2 charges now. Before it was +1. So if you buy a rapid recharge, all of a sudden you've got 5 life drains. So that's a lot of life drains, right? Now Malice pretty much didn't get any changes. Her ult, however, 2 points silences enemies in an AoE, and 3 points gives you 60 spirit power, 40% fire rate, and 50 spirit resistance for 8 seconds. So if I just do the swap, as you can see, I just have like a shit ton of spirit and a bunch of other stuff, like, you know, spirit resist and all that stuff. And the other thing as well, right, is that her ult, as you can see, there's no delay after you cast her ult. It's basically instant. You're actionable right away. Before there was like a slight delay, like of 0.7 seconds. Now it's actionable right away. So these are the biggest Geist changes in my opinion. We've got the Lash, and look, I'm a big Lash fan, and I think he's eating good this patch. So first thing, okay, Ground Strike basically didn't get touched at all. Grapple mostly didn't get touched for the base ability. However, the upgrades got touched. So the second upgrade just got buffed a little bit more weapon damage. And the third upgrade now gives you +1 stamina on cast, as well as 60% air control. What that means is that when you're casting it, so let's say I use a bunch of stamina, I cast it, I gain 1 stamina back. I cast it, gain 1 stamina back, right? So you can kind of just be in the air forever. And the increased air control essentially makes it so like you're kind of like Celeste. So you can strafe like a good amount, right? And so you can kind of do some crazy stuff with it. So very, very good. The max grapple, so sorry, the max flog got changed a little bit. The attack angle no longer scales with spirit. Now you need to max it to get that attack angle. However, when you max it, you get 70% heal versus heroes, whereas before it was only 60% total. So flog overall, when you max it, is a little bit buffed, in my opinion. And then the Death Slam got an interesting change. So first thing is the throw distance no longer scales with spirit, meaning the only way to get throw distance is to put 1 point in this and then to get expansion. So if you put 1 point, you get 12 meters throw distance. And if you want more, you just have to get greater expansion. This makes it so that really the furthest that you can throw people, let's say you have greater expansion, right? If I have Abrams here, the furthest that I can throw him, as you can see, is right there. Before, you could have easily thrown him over there if you had boundless and stuff like that. So what that means effectively is that you can't really throw people into your spawn anymore. I'll just show you guys real quick. I'll throw an Abrams right here. If there's an Abrams in the pit, oops, let me just not mess that up. But if there's an Abrams right here and I'm ulting him, as you can see, I can't even throw him. And that was like, I was in the best position possible. I can't even throw him into spawn. So Lash ulting people into spawn, for the most part, unless you're like really, really close. Like, of course, if he's here, I can throw him into my spawn. But unless he's that close, you know, if you're in the pit, you're probably not getting thrown into the spawn. So that's a thing of the past. However, now there's something else that happened, which is the max AP upgrade gives you 10 meter extra cast range. Now, that is an insane amount of cast range, and I just want to demonstrate, okay? If you're in the base, and let's say there's a bunch... One sec, let me just put in some bots. I just want to show you guys. So, let's say there's an Abrams here. An Abrams here, it's very common that, you know, 6 Abrams are, like, pushing your base. But you can put a bunch of Abrams, like, anywhere you want, okay? And I just want to demonstrate just how big the cast range is, because you can basically get every single person in your base with the ult. And so that is a significant buff to Lash ult. So even though you can't throw people as far, when you max it, you get an insane amount of radius, which makes it so you can, like, people are never going to be out of your radius. And it might reduce the need for greater expansion, but you get so much value from it still. Okay, so McGinnis that we've got right here has gotten a lot of changes. Like a lot. So I won't be able to go over all of them, just like for any other hero. The first thing is that I believe McGinnis wall is destructible, and don't be like me, don't forget. So earlier I had a game where McGinnis walled us off from mid boss, and we forgot that it was destructible, and we were just like, oh man, we're walled off, we can't do anything. But then we realized, wait, we actually can. So you can actually destroy it. It takes 2 heavy melees to destroy a portion of the wall. Right, so just, you know, just to make it clear. So that's kind of cool. Other than that, there's some new AP. So if you max it, for example, it deploys 2 mini turrets, right? And one thing is, like, they clearly want the mini turrets to be a viable build, at least in part. So they've done a bunch of changes to the turrets. For example, they last longer. They last 35 seconds base, and if you max it, they last 47 seconds. And they have a new mechanic where essentially they have very little health, but at the same when you spawn them right away, they have a lot of damage resistance, like very, very high. And then with the Medicinal Spectre, they've done some very interesting changes, which is the first AP now gives you Spirit Resist 40%, which is a lot. And then the second AP gives Stamina Mastery to the people. Right, Stamina Recovery, sorry. It's not Stamina Mastery. And so it's kind of clear that they want McGinnis to have more of this identity, I guess. As like perhaps, you know, not just kind of like a split pusher, but also like a area control supportive character. And then her ult was buffed as well. And, you know, it has dash slows. It has... Her ult is actually honestly crazy now. Like if you max it especially, it's kind of like... It's just an insane amount of damage. And so I think Spirit McGinnis might be back on the menu, guys. Spirit McGinnis might be back on the menu. Now, Mina, with her changes, so I would say that overall she's nerfed. She did get some compensation buffs here and there. Like, for example, if you max Sanguine Retreat, you can have another recast. So, yes, not 2, but 3. Which, you know, seems pretty crazy. However, overall, her early strength was nerfed. A lot of the early numbers were nerfed. And for her to get back things that she had before, she has to invest more AP. For example, to get the heal on Rake, you have to invest 2 AP now instead of 1, which makes her tankiness in the laning stage. She should have to choose between damage or tankiness a little bit more. And, you know, some things like that. As well as her cooldown on Sanguine Retreat can't get as crazy as it can before. It's always going to be a little bit longer just because of how the AP is. And I think the ult damage was nerfed a little bit. So a couple, I would say overall she's nerfed, but she's still going to be very strong for sure. All right, so Mirage, it got some crazy rework. So the first thing is Scarabs no longer have like, like a recast window. It's like you just instant cast a Scarab, okay? And it's just a regular charged ability, and you steal all the HP instantly, okay? So there's no time where the HP ticks. You just cast a Scarab, instantly take all the HP. That's the first biggest change. And now Scarabs, instead of shredding bullet resist, just give damage amp straight up, okay? Then you get 10% damage amp to that target, okay? So you just deal 10% more damage, and if you max it, all of a sudden you deal 20% more damage, and you have increased spirit scaling on the Scarabs, 2 spirit scaling, which is crazy value, as well as getting 2 charges. Now, another big change is they've called Tornado Dust Devil, okay? And base, it only lifts for 0.3 seconds. As you can see, the base tornado basically does nothing, right? Like the lift is barely even noticeable. However, and you can't really get the lift to lift for very long, right? So it's less of a CC ability now, and it's more of a defensive ability. So base, it gives you 30% bullet evasion. However, if you put 2 points in it, you get 60% bullet evasion. And if you max it, you can recast it within 5 seconds. So I don't have cooldown on here. I cast it once, so you can see there's a little thing at the bottom. And then boom, I can cast it again, and it's crazy. The 3 got some small changes. One of the biggest changes is that if you get max marks on someone, you can stun them. And also the marks are calculated a little bit more simply rather than being multipliers. It's just, hey, you can have 5 marks, and for every mark you do 2x damage. And then the ult, probably the craziest change, is you can now teleport literally anywhere. Okay? So you don't have to teleport on a structure. You don't have to teleport on a teammate. You can be like, all right, I'm going to go to the enemy doubles, and then you teleport, and you just arrive at the floor, and then you can instantly steal their doubles or do whatever you want, you know? And that's pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, if you put 2 points in ult, you get a 400 barrier that scales with spirit. And then if you combine that with the fact that your Scarabs now steal a bunch of HP or are instant, combined with the fact that you can double cast Tornado, I think there might be a world in which we see like a sort of somewhat frontliner Mirage. Like that might happen. And that's really cool to me. Like I like that idea a lot because that's very different from the Ricochet backline Mirage that we've seen this whole time. And that might be, you know, fun. So anyway, that's my take on Mirage. All right, looking at Moon Krill, there's one big change, okay? And that's you can go in the tunnels, okay? That's the biggest change, right? You can just burrow in the tunnels. And as you can see, since in the tunnels, you get like increased movement speed, you just move so freaking fast. It's actually hilarious. And so I'm sure that there's going to be some like optimal routes to get a bunch of boxes. Now, the one thing that's hard about the tunnels is that your burrow doesn't last that long. And therefore, like you really don't want to get stuck in the tunnels. So that's the only thing. Other than that, he got a bunch of changes. So now Scorn has much better spirit scaling, which actually allows for a couple things. First thing here is that his first item, he can go first item Mystic Burst in lane, whereas before he couldn't because he didn't have enough damage. Second thing that changes is you can also go Tank Buster, okay? So if you get enough spirit, right, and you just level up a little bit, for example, I have Boundless here, you can actually proc Tank Buster. Tank Buster requires 165 damage. And so you can have it on Scorn, and you can heal a ton from that damage. Whereas before, you could never proc Tank Buster. So that's a massive change. The Sandblast was changed a little bit, but, you know, fundamentally, it's still the same ability. The AP was just changed around. And then for combo, one of the things with combo is that you don't really get... your combo is not very long, and it's a much longer cooldown. And so you have to invest a bunch of AP for your combo to be as good as it was. However, the amount of damage your combo does is very high. And you get 100% lifesteal with just 1 AP. So you can get some solo kills a little bit easier with Mo, especially combined with the Tank Buster change and everything like that. However, the, you know, strictly CC Mo was nerfed a little bit, unless you invest AP, in my opinion. Now, this is all very early, so we'll see. All right, so Paige got mostly nothing burger changes, mostly just number additions, and considering the size of the patch, I don't really even think that they're super worth talking about. So you can look at the patch notes if you want to see, but other than that, you know, she's functionally the same character. They tried to make her spirit build a little bit more viable as far as like dealing damage with it, but she's basically the same character. Now, Paradox got a lot of different changes, and I'll start with the biggest change, which is if you max swap, you can swap a bunch of people. And that looks insanely crazy, right? And there's a lot of wombo combos that you're going to be able to do with this, but that's the biggest change by far. Then the other things is that wall no longer does damage, and it now amplifies bullets that go through it. And if you max it, it goes back to a charged ability, just like it was way back in the day, for those who remember. All right, so there's that. And then on top of that, now your pulse grenade now has like a time slow thing to it, kind of like your carbine. And your wall also has kind of like a time slow where, you know, if an enemy touches the wall, they get like slowed pretty significantly. And so it's very, very hard to move through the wall. So Paradox might be, well, she might change roles from like just a pick hero into now like this insane kind of team fight CC hero that she was not before. So that'll be interesting to see. However, she does significantly less damage like early with her combo, because you don't have like the wall that just does like 9% health damage for free as you swap someone through it, right? Which gave you a lot of damage without investing. Then you kind of have to invest. And Carbine also got a little bit of a buff as far as like damage goes. So you have to invest a little bit more. Moving on to Pocket. So for Pocket, the most significant change is Affliction. So now the Max Affliction upgrade prevents all healing. So it doesn't, you know, do healing reduction. You literally cannot heal if you are afflicted, right? And this is extremely significant because this makes Pocket an extremely good answer to heroes with an abundance of healing. For example, you know, the Kelvins of this world, or, you know, the kind of like bruiser meta that we had previously. The rest of his abilities, I would say, just got some, you know, some small number adjustments here and there. There's going to be different Pocket builds for sure, but to me, the by far the biggest one is Affliction. And if you want to see all of them, feel free to check out the patch notes. Now, Rem mostly got small number adjustments here and there, nothing crazy. I think by far the biggest change is the 2 AP on his ult no longer gives him unstoppable. So, you know, he can't get guaranteed Rem ults through things like Lash ult or things like that. So that's a pretty big deal. But other than that, just some number adjustments, and I don't think anything super crazy. Now, 7 got a lot of small changes that are very impactful. First of all, his move speed no longer scales with Spirit. So even if I buy a bunch of Spirit items, as you can see, I'm not going to move any faster. So there's no scaling of move speed at all with Spirit. There is also no duration scaling on Power Surge, right? So if you want Power Surge to last longer, well, you have to max it, right? So if you max it, lasts 22 seconds. Now, if you buy both duration and cooldown, it has 100% uptime, so kind of same as previously you could get, but you can't just get raw Spirit and get that. There's a couple changes to the second ability as well, but overall, I would say 7's kind of the same hero. Nothing fundamental about him has changed, just some small number readjustments, and his ult now allows him to move right from the get-go. It's just that it allows you to speed it up when you max it. So when you max it, you can move significantly faster, but you can move a little bit kind of right at the beginning. Now, Shiv got some extremely significant changes. The main thing is his ult is no longer point and click, okay? So Killing Blow right here, you just press it and it sends you forward, and it only hits one person, so it's not AoE. So it's a skill shot now. It can be missed. And the other thing is that, let's say that there's an enemy McGinnis here, and let's say that she is very hurt, and I execute her. If I have max ult, it doesn't fully refresh my cooldown. Oh, I had no death on, my bad. But yeah, if I have max ult, as you can see, it doesn't refresh. It just gives me a recast window. So you can see at the bottom, the Killing Blow thing. So that's the window I have to recast my ult. So I can then cast it again. And if it's another execute, then it gives me another recast window. But you don't get infinite executes, and it doesn't fully refresh it for the next fight. The other big change for Shiv is, first of all, the knives don't have impact damage, but now they have significantly more bleed damage, right? So Shiv's damage is kind of back. Shiv's damage has been nerfed over and over and over again because of his strength from his ultimate. Now they've taken away some strength from the ultimate, and they've put it back into the knives, which now do significantly more damage. And if you max them, they do an insane amount of damage, but they don't do any impact damage. So it's really all about just stacking the knives, right? But if you get a couple knives into someone, pretty quickly they start taking a pretty insane amount of damage. As you can see here, I've got 4 knives with no spirit at all, and I'm doing 100 DPS basically, which, you know, I don't even have a single spirit item. I just had knives max there, so definitely can get some pretty crazy numbers there. And then Slice and Dice now reduces spirit resistance, And if you put 2 points in it, it reduces spirit resist by 14%. And I believe that this also applies to the echo, right? So, you know, if you dash twice, I believe both dashes reduce spirit resist. Someone needs to fact check me on that. And someone told me in my chat that it reduced it linearly, meaning that if you keep dashing on the same person, you don't get like diminishing returns on the spirit reduction. Now, I don't know how true that is, but apparently you can get, you know, to like insane amounts of spirit tread. So that's kind of cool, giving Shiv other options. I'm always, you know, down to make Shiv more fun. Hopefully this doesn't make him as annoying to play against, but I've got a feeling with Shiv that bloodletting is still going to be a problem, and so we'll see. Now, Silver got a decent amount of changes. By far the biggest one is that her ult doesn't give her any base resistances. So there's no base resistances. It also gives her less health. And also now the cooldown of her ult is 50 seconds. So her human form is still very strong. Overall, her ult form, I would say, is nerfed. And so interestingly, they've kind of like balanced the power between human and ult form. I thought that this hero was kind of going to be an ult spot. But right now, I would say that her ult is, you know, strong, but it's no longer as crazy as it was. And she has, you know, a decent amount of strength in human form. So Victor got a lot of changes. First thing is Pain Battery always starts charged, okay? So when you spawn in the lobby, you start with Pain Battery charged. So that's a pretty big deal for, you know, for the laning stage. And the other thing is if you max Pain Battery, you get crazy scaling. So 2.2 spirit scaling. Now, the 2 is pretty much the same. There's been some number tweaks here and there, and you get increased spirit scaling if you max it as well. The 3 is the same, except there's one big difference, which is how fast it takes to get to max DPS. So now you get to max DPS much faster than before, and you can see whether you're at max DPS by the bar at the bottom right here, the aura of suffering bar, as you can see. So when it's full, you're at max DPS, and I believe it takes about 6 seconds to get there. The max DPS was reduced, but you get there faster, essentially. And then the ult also got kind of an insane AP, where if you die with this ult, and I just want to show you guys kind of how big it is with expansion, right? And so I'm just gonna die real quick. Look at the reanimation. It's so big, it's kind of crazy. And it stuns for 1.5, sorry, it stuns for 3 seconds, by the way, right? So this is like, I think that this might be the longest stun in the game. That's like actually a stun, not a channel. So I'm not counting Dynamo ult and I'm not counting Bone Krill ult, but I believe that this is the longest stun in the game. And so if you had duration, you know, this would stun for 3.84 seconds, which is just an insane amount of time. So Vindicta got a lot of quality of life, I would say. The first thing is that her fire rate, no longer scales with spirit, but her weapon damage does scale with spirit, so her bullet damage. Now this will kind of double dip into the fact that she gets weapon damage from her ult, which is then going to scale the bullet damage, which is good. Her crow, as you saw, because I just used it, it's kind of like this weird like AoE ability now, where it's instead of throwing one crow out, you throw like a bunch of crows, which is interesting. Her flight is essentially the same, but there's a couple things. You get extra item range during flight, and also if you max flight and you get a kill, it refreshes the flight duration. Additionally, you can also parry during flight, which is quite significant. The ability to parry, because this means that you can buy a counterspell, right? And you can easily counterspell while in the air. You can counterspell a Lash, you can counterspell a bunch of, you know, knockdown, whatever it is, without having to cancel flight, which is a big deal. And then the rest, I would say, are mostly, you know, some small changes here and there. All right, so Viscous got a lot of changes. First thing is Splatter bounces by default. So as you can see, by default, Splatter will bounce once. And if you max it, it'll bounce 2 more times, meaning that you can get it to bounce a total of 4 times, right? And so, and the other thing is that the goo on the ground gives you increased slide distance, okay? So if you slide on this, you get more slide distance. So it's kind of fun, kind of cool. The cube mostly just got a cooldown change, as well as like, you know, a little bit of regen change. The puddle punch now kind of has an insane radius, especially if you've got a greater expansion. You can get some absolutely massive puddle punches. I mean, these are just, you know, some of the biggest punches I've ever seen. I mean, look at that. That's kind of crazy, right? And, you know, expansion's already kind of good for your ult and other things, so you're definitely going to see some funny stuff there. And the goo ball overall got buffed, as well as the max goo ball. Well, first of all, base goo ball allows you to use abilities right away, so you don't need to max your goo ball to use abilities. And if you max it, now it gives you more duration, and it increases the stun duration as well. So I think there's going to be a lot of potential for goo ball builds this patch, and Viscous is certainly going to be probably very strong. Okay, so Warden got a lot of changes, okay? Now, the most significant are some of the 3 AP, like 5 AP changes, okay? So Willpower 5 AP now gives 40% debuff resist. Okay, 40%, right? Which is crazy. Cage max AP now gives silences enemies until they escaped or are immobilized. What that means is that the moment you put the cage on them, they're silenced, by the way. Like this whole time, until they either get out of the range of cage or they get immobilized, and then they're not silenced anymore. So it's just like an instant silence on anyone, which is extremely powerful, and minus 18 seconds. So you have this pretty often. And this is catching people, you know, by surprise very, very often. And then the max last stand gives you unstoppable while channeling. Okay. So you just get this. So you can't be stopped. You can just channel it right in front of people. You can use it as a way to kind of like stall and buy time for your team. So pretty cool stuff. And other than that, we just got some kind of like small changes. Like a lot of the power of Flask was kind of like gate kept behind the 5 AP. Now the 5 AP for Flask is really strong because it's minus cooldown, plus radius, and applies fire rate. Before, I believe it didn't have the radius, but regardless, you know, a little bit more power locked behind the max AP upgrade and a little bit worse beforehand. His gun damage also got nerfed slightly. So Gun Warden, it technically is a little bit worse, but at the same time, since Cage now silences, there's like definitely an opportunity to just max Cage, and that gives you like a pretty good tool as Gun Warden as well. Okay, so Wraith probably got one of the biggest reworks of the patch, where now she has card types. Okay, so every card is unique. So I just got a Joker this was not scripted. That's the first card. It's a 1 in 9 chance, so I kind of won the gambling. But basically, you've got the spade, the diamond, the club, and the heart card, and they all do different things. And the Joker does all of them. Okay, so if I shoot this card, it's gonna reduce their bullet and spirit resist. It's gonna slow the person. It's gonna do bonus damage, and it's gonna heal me. Right. So I'll just show you guys. I use the Joker, and it kind of does all of these effects. And the Jokers they're absolutely crazy. They're absolutely insane. And there's definitely like huge potential to, you know, pop off with them. Now that's really the biggest rework on Wraith. Other than that, the ult has also been reworked, right? So now if you ult, it like you can reposition someone. Okay, so while you're ulting, you can't shoot. So it's less of a just like, oh, I point and click and kill you. It's more of a I point and click and I relocate you and then I kill you. Okay, so it's a little bit different. So it's like instant. It's a little bit faster. Boom. You just do that. You point them. It doesn't silence them anymore, and it doesn't disarm. It only prevents stamina and movement-based items and abilities. So, for example, you know, if you go on Mina, she won't be able to use her bats. You know, Pocket. Anyone with movement abilities, Sinclair TP won't be able to TP if he gets caught by this. So a little bit different. And then full auto no longer gives anything to your teammates. However, if you max it, you now get unlimited ammo for the duration. So you can just shoot for as long as you want. So ammo's not a problem when you have it maxed. And last but not least, we have Yamato. Now, Yamato actually got quite a lot of interesting changes. First of all, she got a 8 meter cast range power slash max talent, which makes it so the power slash goes, you know, extremely far. I get surprised by it many, many times. The second thing is Flying Slash, which is her second thing, has a lot of changes. First of all, if you put 2 points in it and you grapple, you now gain 40 spirit for 6 seconds, which allows you to then do a power slash with 40 extra spirit, which, considering power slash has 2.4 scaling, you're gaining like 100 damage on your power slash just by doing this, right? So very, very significant for the burst. Crimson Slash got some slight changes, but nothing crazy. It's mostly like the first AP now makes it so you get more melee damage for 4 seconds, kind of playing into the fact that Yamato is a bit of a melee archetype in a way. Also with Flying Slash, the max grapple AP gives you charges, and you can grapple to ally heroes, okay? Now, I don't really know if they consider this thing, but I just want to show you guys real quick that with charges, you can do some pretty crazy escapes. So let's say I'm running away from here, right? And I'm trying to escape, and I've got a friendly hero here. Well, I can simply just cancel on the friendly hero and then just TP away. Not TP away, but slide away. But also, if you're in enemy territory, you can do some pretty crazy stuff, because you can even target structures, right? So let's say I'm trying to escape. I'm behind the walker, and somehow I don't know why I would be in this situation, but I go to the walker, cancel it from the walker, and then I can go on the guardian. Oh, I messed it up. Sorry, but you know. The idea is kind of the same. You go on the Guardian and then... Oh, I don't have any stamina, but you guys get the idea. You can cancel it, and you can kind of go flying past things, kind of like this a little bit. And I think that there's some repercussions that maybe they didn't consider with this, but I think this patch is so big that there's a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's a pretty significant change. And then her ult, her max ult gives her even more resist than previously. But other than that, and then max Crimson Slash, rather than reducing the cooldown, also gives it better scaling on the damage and the healing. So that's pretty significant as well. So lots of cool changes there.